Hello friends, Tanya here with another Trinity Stamps video. This time we're going to do Fun in the Sun with Stencils by the Sea. We're going to be using the Shellabration stamp set with coordinating dies. And I am keeping the coloring in here. If you want to skip the coloring, I would go to 3 minutes 2 seconds on the time mark. And if you want to stick around for the coloring, awesome. We're going to go with some really bright colors this time. This is R14 and R45, I believe, to do the crab. Now I'm going to use the same color palette through all of the images. And this little guy just has the two tones. I wanted a nice bright red. And for the shell, I'm going to use a couple of E's, E30 and E35. I'm using the darker of the two colors just to outline the lines on the shells. And then I'm going back and not completely covering all of that, because I want there to be some irregularities in the shell color like there would be somewhat in nature. These are by no means super realistic images, but I like to add a little detail. For Mr. Octopus, I am using some colors that you wouldn't naturally think would shade together. They are some violets. One's more of a blue violet and the other is a more red violet. And I'm using the blue violet as the shading area. And you'll see that this actually combines together very well. I would call this an intermediate Copic skill to take two colors that are so very different to create a new color and new effect. I am actually quite pleased with how this turned out. I may have used these colors together before because Copics honestly don't have a ton of purples. For the mouth, again, just using a W6, I believe, and R21 for the pink. And then I'm adding some stippling details with the R21, and you can see how that creates that mottled look that is perfect for an octopus. Now the fish, of course, had to be a goldfish. I don't know why, it just had to be, because we've already done purple and red, maybe, and I didn't really want to do a teal. And there are all three of these images colored in. I do go over them with some Clear Wink of Stella. I do come back and use a Sakura Jelly Roll pen to add white dots to the eyes and some sparkle pen to add detail. Now I did take a lot of the party elements and I stamped them 6 times, and you're just going to watch me do one because I am just doing the same thing with different colors for all 6 sets. I wanted to have a variety of these images to use while I was creating the scenes. And why did I do 6? Well, because I ended up doing 6 cards, but you're only going to see 3 of them because I did 2 of each. So we're going to start with, I have to say, my least favorite card. And I walked away and the next morning looked at them again, and I don't dislike them so much. However, I did use tumbled glass and broken china, distress inks, not the oxides, just distress inks to ink that background. And now I'm using Versamark through the layered confetti stencil. I did tape that down, and I'm using that to do some gold confetti first. I'm sprinkling that gold embossing powder on, and we're going to heat set that really quick. Now I did at first want to do the gold and the teal and the purple glitter gels there, but I forgot that I would have to have some drying time in between that. The layering stencils are so awesome because you can do your first layer and then there are etched outlines to help you line that back up the way you want it to be, or according to the pattern, and then you just tape it down and get to work. Now I am using the teal and the purple glitter gels here, and I'm just carefully trying not to overlap too much over the teal with the purple so I don't completely change the color. I mean, that would be silly to change, to not be careful. I can't scrape this back into the jars because there is a mix of teal and purple there, so I'm going to wipe it off on my paper towel. Now this needs to stay to be set aside to dry for a few minutes. So let's move on to some balloons. This is from the Bunch of Balloons dies, and I took a variety of vellums from my stash and cut those out. After the panel was dry, I die cut that with the modern embossed rectangles. backed it with some coaster blank, and glued that down to an A2 card base. Now I did lay out these vellum balloons the way I wanted and put a piece of tape over the top to keep them grouped together. And then I just add a little bit of glue around the center cluster to create this balloon cluster. And then I add a little chipboard behind that. Now I'm going to take the images I'm going to use. This card is definitely balloon themed. And I had already put a chipboard backing on the fish balloon. I used the same die that I used to cut out the image to cut out the chipboard. And then I am adding a little bit of chipboard, or excuse me, not chipboard, coaster blank behind all of the paper images that are visible through the vellum. By using that technique, you don't see the coaster blank behind the images, and I just wanted a little extra dimension there. Now this stamp set comes with 3 sentiments, and all of the sentiments have coordinating dies. So I stamped those with VersaFine Onyx Black and clear heat embossed them, and then die cut them with the coordinating dies. And here I'm just adding them behind, adding some chipboard behind, or coaster blank behind those again. So that was the first card. We're doing 3 cards. The second one, I'm using the layered palm tree stencils, and I'm creating a hill. I have in my stash this wonderful embossing powder called sand embossing powder, and I am currently in love with it. And I just used the Versamark to create a sand hill, and we'll heat emboss that quickly. I have this sped up like 8 times. Woof, fast. Then we're going to use some tumbled glass again, and I must have had a little bit of red on that brush because I've got a little bit of purple in there too. I did clean it extra good for the second version of this card. So now we're using more of the layered palm stencils. I do recommend blocking off or masking off those pieces that you don't want to stencil at the same time. I did get a little bit of brown in the middle of this scene, but I'm going with it. Now I'm using bundled sage, and then peeled paint, and then forest moss. There's 3 layers to this layered palm fronds. And we are quickly adding those. That actually went pretty fast. There are actually coordinating stencil, the negative parts, so I layered a whole bunch of palm trees on this hill. Now we're going to lightly tack Mr. Crab down with his shell while I place these little pieces. So the hat didn't really fit on him, but I wanted it on the image. I wanted it on the card. So I'm tucking the hat and the gift under the edges of the crab. I do want these pieces to be even with him because, again, he is up on a piece of coaster blank that I cut with the coordinating die also. So I'm adding just little bits of coaster blank behind the top portions of these images. And he's going to have a cupcake in one hand and ice cream in the other. And that just looks so fun and refreshing. And I am loving the way this card turned out. I love that sandy beach. The sky actually doesn't even look bad with the purple mixed in. Actually, this may be the second one, but I still didn't mind the purple mixed in. And then I am not adding any dimension behind these die cut sentiments. I think the die cutting really helps them stand out well, along with the embossing. By clear embossing those titles or sentiments, that really adds to it. And that is card number 2. Card number 3, we are going to use the Tree of Light stencils a little different than we normally would. It's certainly not going to be Christmas theme. I love the variety of random sized and placed circles on this particular stencil. And I was kind of thinking I wanted a radiating ray appearance to this, but that would have worked better if I'd used different colors or spaced it a little differently. But I really like how this turned out. And this time, instead of using a stencil to create that sandy ocean bottom, I just used my inked up Versamark sponge dauber inking tool, whatever, and put the ink, the Versamark directly on the paper and did that sand embossing powder again. Now we're using the same technique here. The Octopus has already got a piece of coaster blank behind it. I added the coaster blank to the tops of these little pieces, and I had already planned out exactly where I wanted all of my little pieces. He's going to be holding a bunch of balloons. There is a balloon string stamp in this set. Doesn't really work with the way I created this card, so I'm just going to layer up these balloons. I love that there is variety. There's 2 different shapes of balloons in this stamp set. Love that. And we're going to use the happy birthday sentiment this time. And again, not going to pop these up. Just going to glue those directly to the card front. And that goes mighty quick. And then I'll give you a close-up look of this particular card. Again, I think this one might be my favorite. I don't know. It's hard to have a favorite. So I'm going to draw the balloon strings in with just a marker, a fine tip marker, and my tip is practically gone. So there is the fishy card and the Shellabration card. I love that crab and that beach, and the bubbly octopus card. I hope this video helps you build your stash of birthday cards for kids. I know I never have enough of them when I need them. You can check the description box below for all of the supplies that I used in this video. And I would love to hear from you to see which card is your favorite and what kind of themes you would love to see in the future. And do you love to see the coloring? Do you want to see more of that? How about what techniques have you been dying to see us use? That's all I have for you today. We have a couple of videos here that we thought you might enjoy. And until next time, have a great day.